We are back with you, Eagles Talk A2D Radio. We continue our training camp talk. Vic Fangio had some interesting quotes to say about Bryce Huff, so we'll dive into that and all the other training camp headlines and storylines after the first week. Let's go, Eagles Talk.
You love the Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! You love the Philadelphia Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! Philadelphia!
We are back again. Like I said, Eagles Talk on A2D Radio. We are brought to you by Baggio's Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, home of the best stuffed bread, tomato pie, sandwiches, cutlets, and meatballs. Make sure you mention A2D to get 10% off your in-store purchase. Coming at you, we are back. It's your boy Chucks, it's Brinks, and it's PY. Gentlemen, how you doing? We're a week into training camps across the league and with the Eagles. How do you feel about it? You guys excited? You tired of the overreactions already?
Yeah, if I see one more bubble helmet, I'm gonna freak out.
I'm fine with the bubble helmets. Like if you want to play in it, I don't care. As long as you feel good in it, whatever.
Yeah, they look. I mean, they obviously look funny, but hey, if it helps, then whatever. It's practice, so it doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, we're gonna get into it. There's a lot of stuff going on already after the first week, and one of the things that really caught my attention and what I'm putting up for our leading topic for today and our poll question, Vic Fangio's quotes about Bryce Huff. Do you think they are worrisome? Are they worrisome? Agree or disagree? If you didn't know, if you're listening and tuning in, you weren't aware of what he said. He essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, right now, Bryce Huff being someone who hasn't been an every down player in the past. Right now, he is not. He doesn't look like an every down player, but they hope and they believe that he will be in time. And he's got a lot of work to do, but they believe in the player. So that's what his quotes were. And of course, you're going to get some people having something to say about it. So I think last week I led with you, PY. So Brinks, start us off. Do you agree or disagree to the poll?
Yeah, this is extremely worrisome because Vic Fangio is an old school guy doesn't matter if you're a rookie, undrafted, high paid free agent like Huff, whoever you are, if you're not doing your job, you're gonna hear about it. So you're getting the truth from Vic Fangio. And Vic Fangio doesn't think Bryce Huff is good enough right now. Bryce Huff signed a 3-year, $51 million contract in the offseason. Like, I don't know if he's not happy about him picking up the system or he's not in shape or whatever it may be. Kind of just said he needs more from Bryce Huff. So yeah, it's extremely worrisome because this guy Bryce Huff, say what you want about Hassan Reddick, but Hassan Reddick is a double-digit sack guy in his sleep in this league. Now he's running into trouble because he's not as good as Parsons and Garrett and the Watt guy from Pittsburgh. But this is your TJ Watt, thank you. And Bryce Huff is paid to be a premier pass rusher in this league. So if Bryce Huff doesn't get double-digit sacks this year, that's a huge problem. That means you need someone else that's unexpected to step up and fill that void by Hassan Reddick. Because you didn't want to pay Hassan Reddick. Okay, cool, that's fine. You can't be this wrong about Bryce Huff a week into camp and the coach is already calling him out. Extremely worrisome, especially on a defense that I'm not sure about. I don't know if they're good. I don't know if they're going to be better. I don't know what these guys are. You got 2 rookies, one of which is already hurt. You got Josh Sweat, who disappeared. You had Jordan Davis, who hasn't done a thing in this league. You have Devin White, who is a cast-off, even though I like him. He's a cast-off and has a lot to prove. You have Nakobe Dean, who hasn't done anything in this league. Jalen Carter looks promising, but he hit the rookie wall last year. What is he? I don't know what this defense is. So they need to figure it out, and need to figure it out quick because they're getting hit in the mouth in Brazil in week 1 by the Packers. Because that's a good football team, and that's a football team that's well coached, and that's a football team that has a really good quarterback, at least in my estimation. So you're going to be tested early, and they need to get it together. They need to get it together and come together at camp and be a unit that can, get this offense to where it wants to go. Because the offense is sick. I'm not worried about the offense at all. The main question with this team is the defense going to be able to close the gap enough from last year for them to go further than the wild card round? And this quote does not ease my concerns about that at all. And I really don't like being like this a week into camp. I'd love to say this is no big deal and it's going to be fine. But this guy has no track record as a starter in this league. None. So if you gave a guy $51 million and he can't hack it, you're in trouble.
All right. So PY, I would normally let you go, but I've been like having a lot.
Floor is yours.
I want to rebuttal Brinks. So I think what your sentiment, and Andrew Baker agrees. He says he agrees to the poll also because we paid this man all this money, and let's be honest, this defense right now is in the middle of the pack. So I get it, and like, here's the thing. I think if this was a quote week 1 heading into the season, then I'd be worried. However, I think people that are panicking, like you, Brinks, and like Andrew, are reading this or not getting like what he meant by this quote. Okay, from his time with the Jets up until now, there have been 0 games played between then and now. Right, no games played. So nothing has changed in terms of Bryce Huff being an every down player or not being an every down player. All we know from him is that he was a rotational guy with the Jets, and the Eagles signed him, and I'm sure with Fangio's blessing, to be the guy, to be like Hassan Reddick's placement, to be an every down guy. They wouldn't have paid him this money if they don't see him that way, right? So that is absolutely clear, and I agree, and he has to be that guy. With you on that, but it's the first week of training camp. This is what the practices are for. This is what training camp is for, to get him to go from being the rotational guy he was with the Jets to being the every down player that they believe he can be. And that's all that Fangio was saying, was that right now, week 1 of training camp, and he said this the second day of practice, right? The second day of practice, 2 days of practice, he's not going to look like an every down player. But if you listen and you really read his other quotes, they do believe he will be. There's going to be a lot of work for him going forward, but they believe in him. And I don't think that's anything new. So like, I hard disagree to this poll. I think this is much ado about nothing, even though there were a lot of fans going off about it and really worried. To me, this is common sense. This is saying, hey, like, we knew what he was with the Jets. We knew he was a part-time player. So right now, at the beginning of training camp, that's all this is saying we have to get him to be an every down player. That's what we're working toward. So that's how I read Fangio's quotes. And I think if I were a D coordinator, or if you were to ask me analysis, if is this much ado about anything? I'd say no, it's not much ado about anything, because nothing has been revealed. 2 days of practice, nothing has changed with Bryce Huff to say he is an every down player. So hard disagree to the poll. PY, what do you think?
As usual, it's just people misinterpreting events, unfortunately. It's not like a calling out Brinks or anything, or just any fans in general, but like, I think people are just digging way deeper into this than they want to. Sometimes a duck is just a duck. Like, when he is talking about this, like, he's not crapping on Bryce Huff. He's stating a factual statement. At this moment in time, he's not an every down player, because he wasn't an every down player with New York. It's been a week in training camp. I'm sorry. Not everyone is going to be up to snuff. Like, that's just what it is. Like, I think they have all the hopes in the world that Bryce Huff is going to be a really good player for them, and that he's going to be an every down player. But if you expected Bryce Huff to go from rotational to all of a sudden being an every down player a week in a completely new system, I don't know what you were thinking. Like, I just, it is what it is. Like, it's going to take some time. Like, it's not going to be fixed overnight. Like, he is not going to be Hassan Reddick 2.0. Like, that's not what you're getting. Like, I think you're going to get a really good player from him, but like, it's just not going to be an overnight fix. And Fangio, I like the fact that he's saying that he's not there yet. I think Fangio 100% believes he's going to be. And when he talks about his players, he's like, this is what I want from these players. He's not crapping on them. He's not putting them down. He's not saying he's not going to play Bryce Huff because his lack of dedication. He's not putting in the work. He's not doing what I need him to do in practice. It's been a week. Like, what are we doing? Like, I understand that we paid him all this money. I understand we let Hassan Reddick go. And I understand a lot of people are kind of watching Bryce Huff with a microscope. Like, everything he does is magnified by 100. And I understand, like, Fangio is a no-nonsense coach. So every time he says something, people are going to take it 100% for what he means. Like, there's context with everything he says, like, when it comes to Fangio. Like, there's reasons why he's giving these quotes and he's saying things the way he says them. So I think people need to read the tea leaves and not just assume everything's at face value.
Yeah, great stuff. Let's get to the chat a little bit because it is going off a bit, and a lot of people have their say in it. We got Little G Griffith. It says, I'm a big fan of the Eagles 2024 season. Better Eagles win 14-3. Or 14-3. I'm going to be an uncle. It's a girl. Congrats.
Woo-hoo!
That's awesome. Andrew Baker also does say, thank God this isn't a Philly show. So yeah, thank God. Nate Rosario does give love. He says, as a Niners fan, I like you guys' channel. We appreciate you, Nate. Thank you so much. And thank you for always coming back. Appreciate that. And then Bob Brinkman says, it's early yet. They still got it, Joe.
Yeah.
SJM, hey, haven't seen you in a while, SJM. What's up, man? He says, Philly Daily fan, what's up? I disagree to the poll. Fangio is an old school coach. His comment was candid, and he knows Huff needs to be 3-down pass rusher with no Reddick. John Malmus says, yes, worrisome because this is on Howie knowing that you replace Reddick with someone who has only played half the amount of snaps and who's his backup. BG can't go into the season with that. Nick Spicer says, we need more depth along the D line. Yeah, no, that's perfect.
That's a fair assessment. I would be fine.
Yeah, we are, especially when you consider how our makeup, what we have been in the past several years. This is pretty thin. Like, our depth is pretty thin compared to what we were. So I get that, and I don't disagree. SJM also says the optimistic side of me says Fangio's comment was with the purpose to push off his philosophy is tough love. Our fan base isn't used to truth like this. Huff will improve with Fangio pushing him. Habib 215 says Super Bowl or it's a failure. SJM also follows it up. Says Jim Johnson was renowned for pushing players. Bobby Taylor was quoted recently as saying he hated the way JJ pushed him, but his best years were with him.
Yep,
that's a good point. Hey, that's a very, very good point. Greg says, "What's up?" And he also says, "At least he's not."
Yeah, right. I'll take whatever Bryce Huff gives me because you know what? He's here. Where's Hassan Reddick? What is he in, like, Japan taking, like, pictures and stuff right now? Get his little kimono ready and his umbrella.
Greg says also he disagrees with the poll. Nothing the coach says in week 1 of training camp matters to me right now, and that's fine.
Yeah, this were like Chuck was saying. If this was week 1, like heading into Brazil, I'd probably be on the worry train. But right now, it's just like it's training camp. Like it's just things to say to rile up your players.
Yeah. As JM also says, it will take regular season snaps for Huff to morph into that player. Look at his recent trajectory, special teams to situational pass rusher. Huff is an undrafted player. And that's right. I mean, like, it's not going to, even if he looks a lot better, it's going to be a transition. It's going to be a work in progress. And I think that's where the development of Nolan Smith will help a lot to help get that, with that rotation. Eileen Pompey says, good evening, gentlemen. Hope you all are doing well. Andrew Baker follows up, says, so is the starting D-line Huff, Carter, Davis, and then Huff. I think he missed someone there. I think you're talking about Sweat.
He missed Sweat.
He's talking about Sweat, yeah.
Yeah.
SJM says, I can't see Howie and his staff signing Huff without putting in their due diligence. Absolutely. And then Eileen also says, "Congrats to Tom and Lena on their new baby girl." Yes,
Woo!
yeah, that's awesome. They had their baby girl today, so congrats to Tom and Lena.
Known.
Awesome stuff. And then I wanted to get into this comment, and then as I do, I wanted to bring our favorite guest, Mr. Les Bowen. Les, how are you? How you
Just
doing?
great, guys. How is everyone tonight?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
We've got a really, really good conversation going on, as you've been hearing.
Yes.
And I know this quote from Fangio was last week, but I know it drew a lot of ire. So I wanted to really talk about and discuss it here. PY and I, we disagreed to the poll. We don't think it's much to do about anything, because it happened on day 2 of camp.
Right.
But we've got people like Habib 215 saying they should have just kept Reddick. So what do you think? What do you think this is a worrisome quote by Fangio, or is this like just for first day of training camp stuff?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when he said that, because my first thought is, what's he basing this on? They won't put on pads until tomorrow now, Bryce Huff hasn't done anything so far to stop or not stop the run for Vic Fangio. And so after thinking about this a bit, obviously he's basing this on film from Bryce Huff as a Jet. And we all know Bryce didn't play. Bryce was a pass rush specialist with the Jets. He didn't play a lot of snaps. And probably when they did run it, when he was in there, he didn't do a very good job of stopping it. I don't think it meant anything with regard to his tenure with the Eagles, because there's been absolutely no chance to evaluate that with the Eagles. I'm sorry, they haven't done anything where he tackled the runner. They haven't. You can take my word for it. They haven't, or even tries to tackle a runner. So, it's really, I appreciate Vic Fangio, because a lot of coaches just give you the, everything's going to be wonderful. This guy will do great. He's just the greatest guy ever. It's all going to be so amazing. Fangio's giving it to us pretty straight. It's like, well, he's got to figure it out. He's got a long way to go to do this from what he's done so far, which is what I think he was saying. It's true, and it'll be interesting to see how Bryce Huff adapts to that. And I don't read any more into it than that.
Yeah.
Les, I guess my thing with this is his expectations and his production this season has to match his contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's certainly true, Robert. Nice haircut, by the way.
Thank you. I shaved too.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh yeah, you did. Wow.
Did, yeah.
Yeah, it does. But, I think they are paying him as a pass rusher primarily, but we're all concerned about stopping the run because that became such a big bugaboo down the stretch last season. Is a guy that size going to be a great run? Probably not, Sweat's a terrible run stopper most of the time, not because he's not big enough, but because he's never in his gap. And that's kind of, you want to start there with Bryce Huff. You want, you rush the passer, but you stay in your gap. You don't go wandering over here, on what turns out to be an end around to your side. But I don't know whether he can do it or not. I haven't seen him do it. And I think that's all Vic Fangio is saying.
I think with the funny thing with Sweat, so we all know, like, he came on, when he was drafted, and he didn't do much his rookie season, and like it's been a progression for him as the years have gone on. It's funny because when he was still developing, I think like his year 2 or year 3, what got him on the field was his run defense. He was actually doing really well.
Yeah, he was. You're right.
Yeah. While he was tweaking his pass rush, and then he when he really started to hit that I don't know if you call it ceiling, but when he was at his peak, I guess you'd say 2 years ago in 2022.
Yeah.
That's when he really added counter moves and different things, like a lot of speed to power rush plan to his arsenal, and that's where you really saw him at his peak. Last year, yeah, the run defense definitely went down. I've been trying to like get other people's like take on that, like what happened with the Sweat and his rush defense. A lot of people were saying like maybe it was attributed to the defensive coordinator not really having a plan for the whole defensive line. You saw like the whole defensive line really like disappear. I don't know. I think Sweat has it in him to be a fine rush defender. It's never going to be his strength, his main strength. But
well, that guy though, he has the build. I mean, when you're talking about Bryce Huff, you're talking about a guy who has to, as Reddick did, kind of struggle to do something like that because he's being outweighed by the guy who's blocking him by 50 or 60 pounds.
Absolutely.
Josh Sweat's a big dude, built dude. He looks like a superhero. You know, I mean, he is
Sweatman.
If you were gonna cast a defensive lineman in a movie, you know, that's the guy. You know, that guy's build is incredible. He can do it physically. It's just a matter of, you know, being motivated to do it, being coached to do it, being, you know, and staying where you're supposed to be.
Yep, absolutely. And I know that we had the one comment from Habib saying, you know, we should have just kept Reddick. I think seeing now, I don't think that
until he signs with the Jets,
yeah,
for less than $25 million a year, I have no time for that. I mean,
exactly. He would just be doing here what he's doing there. He'd be sitting out. And all this, well, you know, he's a hometown kid. He would take a discount. He took the discount, the first discount. He's not taking a second discount.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's a tough situation because I've said this many times on here and other forums. He's trying to get paid for what he's already done.
Yeah.
And that isn't how it works.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get paid for what you've already done. You get paid for what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And at his age, what he did last season, nobody sees him as a $25 million defensive end. Now, 2 years ago, he had the most amazing pass rushing season I've ever seen from an Eagle. I wasn't covering the Eagles during the Reggie White years, but, you know, in this century, that was just astonishing what he did.
Yeah.
But it was 2 years ago. And, you know, you can't go back and give him money for that.
Yeah.
And I'm just shocked. Joe Douglas is not an idiot. He's not been a great general manager for the Jets, but he's not an idiot. I know the guy, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've read is, I don't want to belabor this too much, but one of the things I've read is that they thought they had an agreement that he would play, they would adjust the contract, they would give him a little more money and up the incentives and stuff. And then he didn't show up. And it was like, whoop, changed my mind.
Yeah.
And that's not a great way that's not the way you do business in the NFL, which might help explain why Hassan, despite his talent, is on his fourth team right now.
I think it says a lot that like, because usually when you have these trades, you hear about other trades that kind of fell through or trades that were matched and they ignored to, like, when the Panthers traded up to get Bryce Young, like, you heard about other options between that the Bears could have traded to. You didn't hear anything about this. All you've heard is it was just the Jets, and that's probably who it was. The only team dumb enough to make this trade was a team desperate enough to make this trade, which was the Jets. After everything that happened last year with Aaron Rodgers, they needed that big-time defensive player to go along.
Especially since they knew Huff was going to leave them for more money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they needed.
But they didn't have any plan.
Nope.
The day the trade was made, I thought, okay, Joe has a plan. He's going to pay Hassan Reddick. But that was not his plan.
So too.
His plan was to get through this year, sweeten it up a little bit, you know, and have him earn a new contract. And for whatever reason, that hasn't happened. It might still happen, you know.
I don't think it does.
You know, what we hear, and I wasn't anywhere near the locker room last year, and I don't know how true this is, but apparently part of the sourness of the second half was that Hassan was so unhappy, you know.
Yep.
And
stat pad.
I don't have a lot of bandwidth for that, frankly. That's not what you need. I covered Jason Babin. I don't need to see that again.
Oh boy.
So, Les, do you think, and this is just my concept, do you think what played out last year played a part in why a lot of teams probably didn't want to go out and trade for him? Because like they
That in his age. He's not a young, what's the profile of pass rushers over 30 who really light it up, for you? I mean, I don't
All right,
know.
somebody needs to make
there's a
that
guy
meme.
here and there. Every now and then there's a Julius Peppers or something,
Yep.
but no, I mean, it's just not something that is a thing. And I feel bad for Hassan in that the Cardinals screwed around with him early in his career. He wasted years that he wasn't getting big money.
Nope.
And then he went to Carolina,
he was good.
That was a bad situation. And he got the best deal he could from the Eagles, but it still wasn't really what he was worth. And now he's looking at 30 and he doesn't have the money that he thinks he should have. But I don't see how you get it. It's just one of those things.
It is one of those things. So we'll see how that plans out. I know, people in the chat pretty much agree. Like it's really odd, and and
that's not saying that Bryce Huff's going to be great. I have no idea, but
yeah, exactly.
This wasn't a manageable situation.
Yeah,
Can we
actually,
the secondary.
Yeah, I just want to get to this comment. How SJM says how he took a page out of Chuck's book. He allocated the Reddick money to the combo of Barkley and Huff. Running backs matter.
They do.
Heck yeah.
That's the 49ers.
So to transition, there are a lot of takeaways that I've been hearing over the past several days from training camp. So while we have you here, Les, we'll go through some of them. After we've talked about Fangio and this thing about Bryce Huff. If we want to stick on the defensive side, I know that a lot of the big question mark in terms of the roster is CB2.
Yep.
So what we've been seeing now is Keely Ringo has been 3 days at CB2 as a starter, but Rodgers has been still getting in there, getting some work with the ones as well. Quinton Mitchell has gotten reps on the first team as a slot, and then we've got James Bradbury, who had a really good quote. I don't know if it was yesterday or today. I think it was yesterday, about how he volunteered pretty much to transition and switch over to safety. And I loved his quote. I've been on here since last season saying it's time to move on from Bradbury, but I've always had respect for him because he's always been a great teammate. So I love what he said. Yeah, he's a pro's pro. And I had tweeted out earlier today that if he can show he can transition to safety well and be a depth piece at that position, then I'm for keeping him because he could be another safety. So I'm okay with that. But that's what's going on in the secondary right now. So I mean, Les, if you want to give your reactions first, and then obviously bring some people I want to piggyback.
Yeah, real quickly on that one thing. I like Bradbury. He's a great guy. He's a smart guy, and I like Avonte Maddox for the same reasons. But the problem is you can't keep guys like that as depth guys because depth guys in the secondary play special teams. And I don't see James maybe Avonte could still do it, but I don't see James Bradbury, running down there and destroying a punt returner.
Yeah. Good point.
I don't know about that. I mean, I still think they're kind of treading water until they just give up and release him. But it would be neat if he found a role. I mean, it's not like safety. Everybody's, the story I read today was well, they have starting safeties with Gardner Johnson and Reed Blankenship. Well, we hope they do. I mean, people get hurt, and stuff. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that he could have a role there. But Fangio, again, being the realist, pointed out how rare it really is. People talk about this all the time, like it's like going from wide receiver Y to Z or something.
Like going from catcher to first base.
Yeah, no, it's more like going from wide receiver to tight end or something like that. It's a big switch.
Especially in Fangio's scheme. the safeties really have a lot of responsibility. It is
Right.
a totally different animal. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
But as far as the CB2 thing, I wanted to real quickly jump on that. It impresses me that spot and at right guard, which is the other starting position that's really up in the air, they're sometimes with these competitions, you get to training camp and they've already decided who the winner is going to be.
Yep.
That is not the case.
No, that is wide open.
Everybody's getting reps at CB1. It seems like everybody's getting reps. Some of it has to do with Tyler Steen getting hurt, I guess. But nonetheless, a lot of guys are getting reps at right guard. I don't think they've come to any foregone conclusions on either of those spots, and I think that's a wise thing, frankly.
Yeah,
I think there's just so much talent on this roster when it comes to cornerback. Like anyone could be CB2. Like it could be Kelly Ringo. It could be Quinyon Mitchell. It could be Isaiah Rodgers. When he comes back from injury, it could be why am I blanking on their second round guy?
Cooper
DeJean. Cooper DeJean. Yes, it could be Cooper DeJean.
I don't know. They make a big deal out of listing him at DB on the roster, so I don't know what they have in mind for him. They don't list him as a corner. They have like a whole bunch of guys they list at corner, like 14 of them all together. Yeah. But he's not one of the, for whatever reason, they're calling him something else. So I don't know. But yeah. But he's going to be, I'm afraid with DeJean, this is enough of an injury for a rookie that it's going to put him, I know he's smart and he's savvy, but it's going to put him pretty far behind.
Yeah, it is.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I wouldn't rush him back either because there's such a log jam that we don't need him. You know what I mean? It'd be another thing if we were shallow there, but like we have bodies, we have guys. I think the more important thing is just making sure he's not rushed back from injury. And like he's a smart kid. He will catch up. There's just no need for him to rush back. Right. You don't need him to come back early. And if he can somehow, be a contributor like later in the season, great. I'd rather have that than rush him back from injury. So take your time, Cooper. Like I don't think it's I'm not panicking when it comes to Cooper's injury. He's got time. He's got time. The other position that we were talking about is linebacker. Most of the time it's been Nakobe.
Hold on. With Bradbury, I'm gonna say something. I think our starting safeties in Brazil are James Bradbury and CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Oh, okay. Really?
Have you been drinking?
You think Bradbury's going to beat out Reed?
Yeah.
No, I will bet you. I'll bet you whatever you want right now. I'll bet you whatever you want right now.
When he's on the way out the door and facing criticism and implies himself, he has really, really good all-pro seasons in this league.
What do you want to bet right now?
That is a kid with Bradbury. That is a weird thing. He's had a real up and down for the Eagles.
Is it like I like Bradbury a lot, and I have such respect for him for being able to be
a fan of him now because of how he talked the other day.
Yeah, for being the pros pro that he is, because he could be salty, he could be a crybaby, he could demand to be cut or traded or whatever, and that's phenomenal.
Maybe he'll carve out a slot role for himself.
Maybe he'll go on a date with Sabrina Carpenter.
He's going to make the team.
Reed Blankenship. Fascinating player to me, undrafted, played way over expectations. But I see sometimes fans, he's the plucky little white guy, Yes. Sometimes fans get a little over their skis on guys like that. He's not an all-pro. He's not at all. If he had that kind of talent, he would have been drafted, But I don't see Bradbury necessarily beating him out. You're right, Robert. That's one thing that was brought up some last season is Bradbury's whole career has been great year, bad year, great year, bad year. I don't know why that is.
Whenever he wants,
he looked so bad last year, and he looked so slow last year and he is getting older that I we'll have to see.
The only rebuttal I have to that, Les, is clearly from his press conference, whatever, the other day, is he's aware he stunk last year.
Oh yeah,
How could you not?
He's the guy who said in the
These
Super
guys
Bowl,
have big
I held
egos,
him.
Pete.
Yeah.
They think they've been told they're the greatest thing since sliced bread
Yeah.
until they're 31, 32 years
Yeah.
old, and they don't get it. And then they're running with the twos, and they don't get it. And then they start
Right.
complaining, and then they're cut, and then they're out of the league. Self-awareness is not – I mean, Les, maybe you can speak to this, but in the locker rooms that I've been in, which obviously hasn't been a lot, nowhere near as many as Les Bowen, but self-awareness among professional athletes –
It is rare. You're right.
Not,
It's really
not
rare.
something that's
Yeah.
overwhelmingly popular.
And at that position, what you tend to see are guys that are just ridiculously self-confident, who just think that they all walk around like they're the greatest that ever played, and it's kind of how you have to almost look at it sometimes to be a corner on the outside.
Quinion Mitchell, I want him to be like that.
Yeah.
James Bradbury, you gotta learn your role and carve out a place. I think you will.
I think the thing with Bradbury, and I said this as we saw him struggle late in the season. When it comes to older corners, when they hit that wall, it hits hard because with corner, it's athleticism. A lot of it is athleticism.
Yeah, and there's no way to really make up for it.
There's
you can't
none.
choke up on the bat or anything.
Exactly. It's not. If you look at, and you guys know, I watch film. I watch every single snap of all 22 of the Eagles during the season. So I've seen it. Like with Bradbury, you don't like. If you watch when he gets beat, it's not because he's missing an assignment. He knows where he's supposed to be. He doesn't have that speed anymore. He doesn't have the quickness. Athleticism has gone out the window. He's hitting that age. And so people think that when you decline in athleticism, because like guys like Charles Woodson did it before, and with you go, okay, you're not as athletic, so go to safety. That's not, again, especially in Fangio's system, that's not how it works. Like, especially in Fangio's system, you have to be able to cover one-on-one against whoever is lined up in the slot, the number 2 or the 3 receiver. If they might be a running back, they might be a tight end. And you have to tackle.
These days, unless you're like a strong safety from 25 years ago who just supported the run and maybe covered a few steps and around the 5-yard marker. These days, a safety has to be able to move laterally is really, really well, maybe better than a corner.
Yeah.
And I don't think you gain any lateral speed when you lose your vertical speed.
And one of the weaknesses of Bradbury's game is tackling.
Yeah.
Fangio's system, you have to tackle because you're coming from depth. Oftentimes you're playing quarters. You're coming from depth, and if you have gap responsibility, you have to fly and trigger downhill and tackle. That's not something that Bradbury does well. So I am not someone like, I know PY loves Blankenship. I'm not on his end of the spectrum. Like, I don't think Blankenship is a special player at all. But I think Blankenship is a solid safety. I think
he's a solid
safety.
Yes.
So I think it's just a little like that's saying a lot to say that Bradbury's going to beat out Reed Blankenship, who has earned his spot as a solid starter.
I think it would have to be an injury. I don't think they're going to go into the season with him ahead of either of those guys.
Yep. Absolutely.
And even if we did have a Reed Blankenship injury, there's enough safeties out there that I would feel more comfortable in signing than James Bradbury.
Yep. And Jalen's a veteran guy. Jalen Mills,
take Jalen Mills right now over James Bradbury at safety. What are we doing?
And Jalen wasn't a terrible corner in the right scheme.
No.
He just can't. He was not a guy that you could put on somebody one-on-one down the field. Exactly. But boy, he could cover. He could cover in the red zone.
Yes, he could.
Julio tell you that. Yeah.
Yep. And Gronk. Yeah, Mills had a great.
He had Gronk in the clamps in the first half of that Super Bowl.
Great Super Bowl Mills did.
2 yards.
SGM says maybe Bradbury's making himself more appealing for other teams.
Maybe. I think other teams though are just going to say, okay, the Eagles have to cut him.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's that. So we got a few minutes before we let you go, Les. But one more take. So I mean, like, a lot of it, on the offensive side. Jalen Hurts looks good so far, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
And,
And he seems to be, and I don't want to interrupt you, but
Mhm.
more important to me, and I wrote about this for PHLY, he seems, in the spring, he was like, this is 95% new. And he was saying weird things about Nick Sirianni. But now it all seems, he's never explained all that crap, but he's saying good things about Kellen Moore's offense. Kellen Moore is saying good things about him. He looks good in practice. He looks like he knows, what he's doing out there. It all seems to be coming together, in the right way, although we're very, very early. But, the things that seemed really head scratchy in the spring don't seem to be issues right now.
Yeah. And I there was an interesting quote. We can talk about that too. Because we all know with Jason Kelce gone, the protections are something that has to be done, right? And I think it was Shield that was talking about, Shield Kapadia.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying how, like, there was a quote, I think it was from Jalen, saying that he wanted to
Hurts
do
wants to do it. Yeah, that's
He
true.
wanted to do it last year, but
Jason
is that you're not going to do it over Kelce.
You're right.
So that's really encouraging, knowing that, like, Hurts has been wanting to for not just for this year, but
a nuance there is, so they had Kellen Moore the other day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Kellen Moore has a few potential traps to step around in these press conferences, and that was one of them. Somebody said, "So Jalen says he wants to do the protections at the line," and Moore says, I kind of think maybe he and Cam Jurgens will work together on that.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they'll both do it.
Yeah,
Let's not get into that right now.
Yeah. And it'll probably be that. It'll, because it's Cam and the quarterback and center. I mean, we always think about in terms of being on the same page. You always for me at least, Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday always communicate with each other. So, like, it's always going to be natural. So I think it probably will be a combination of Hurts and Jurgens. But I thought that was really interesting to hear, is that protection stuff. So Hurts, not a
and it's good to see that Hurts wants to do that.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
I would let Hurts do it over Jurgens.
I don't know. I have no idea whether I would listen to them both. Jurgens is pretty smart, and he was a starter on that line last year next to Kelce. So, I think he has probably pretty good insight into what's going on.
I think it should be a joint thing between both of them.
So they don't get any 5-minute conversations. No, really, I think we need to slant this way.
Yeah. And then, with Kellen Moore, the whole thing is day one of practice. We heard and we saw a lot of it of
motion
being finally incorporated, which is good. And then the other thing, though, that some people have been ignoring, but there's been a lot of Jalen Hurts as a runner still being used. So that is, I think that is something to take note of. I mean,
you have to use him as a runner.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you
not a Peyton Manning defense
right.
sector pocket.
Well, not only that,
if he doesn't run it all, then he's going to be useless with his arm.
Keeps defenses honest.
Correct.
A couple years ago, I would have argued that they need to get away from that more, that there's no way he's going to stay healthy, blah, 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 blah. And then we saw that Super Bowl season. And on the one hand, he got hurt. He got that shoulder in the Chicago game, which could have blown up the whole thing. But on the other hand, when he came back and there were a few games where he was able to play, but he couldn't really run, he wasn't good. I think more – I'm not saying that he isn't a good enough passer to win it as a passer, because I kind of think he is in the right setup. But psychologically, emotionally, I think there's something – if he's not out there, dodging around and picking up yards with his feet, I just don't know if he feels like he's into it. If he feels like he's really comfortable.
Very good
I think
point.
it gets him going on the field. Like,
yeah,
I think
exactly.
when he's making guys miss, and then when he's like getting those extra yards with his feet, it's making him more aggressive as a passer and be like, oh man, defense is going to give me what I can. But if they just give me that extra step, I can get that 20 and then we're rolling. Because look at the Super Bowl. When he was getting those yards, the passes were zipping. He was finding guys.
Right.
And what's the one thing that you weren't really seeing this year is when he
Last
wasn't
year, yeah.
able to consistently run the way he wanted to, turnovers happen because he felt he had to force it because his legs weren't giving him the opportunities. So he had to thread the needle with his passes.
Yeah, no, and I think in today's game, the nature of it, you have these true dual threat quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, like, and I'm sure I'm forgetting someone else, but like, and we've seen it before with Cam Newton, like that weapon is really, it's so useful as long as you use it right,
Yep.
and the quarterback is still able to beat you with his arm when needed. That's
That's
when
right.
you're able
Yes.
to be a dual threat. Yeah, because you're not a dual threat if you can't throw the ball.
If you're,
You have to be able to
if you're
both.
that, you're just Tebow.
You're just
And you also can't get into that thing that the Eagles used to get into. And this even happened in the Super Bowl season. In fact, the day that he got hurt in Chicago, this is what was going on, where the offense isn't really working. So you just say, okay, Jalen.
Yep. Just
You
run
go
it
do
20
it.
times.
You know, we can't figure out a way to get to the ball to AJ Brown for some reason against the Chicago Bears. So you just run around and we'll figure something out. You need to do better than that.
yes, exactly, and I'm sure more will. Having more answers like that. So it's very, very encouraging. Les, as always, a great time. We love having you on. You bring
Good being here,
so much
guys.
so much good other dimension to the show. So we appreciate you. Anything you wanted to plug for this week?
No, I'm writing for PHLY. I know it's expensive, but if anybody has money, if you want to chip in there, it is behind a paywall. But I got out to camp one day last week for a specific story. They don't, I don't have a credential to be out there all the time, but I'm hoping to get out there more,
Nice.
as time goes by, and bring an informed perspective, not just on how things used to be, but how things are going now.
Nice. That would be great. Yeah, we're always rooting for you, and we love your work. So keep up the great work, and we'll see you here next week, and
Yes.
have a good week.
Thanks. You too, guys.
See you, Les.
That is Les Bowen of PHLY, the one of the great writers and journalists of Philly. We always love having him. It's still surreal sometimes for some of us.
Less is always more.
Yeah, less is always more. We love it. So again, hit that like, hit that subscribe. We've got about 13 minutes left. There's still some more comments I want to get to and other storylines, but if we backtrack, Jason Bennett did ask us, is Jalix going to get some playing time this year? It depends on Jalix. Like, I think that he's a work in progress.
He is a progress player.
Yeah, I don't think you can expect it, but again, it's all on Jalix. I'm sure. I mean, we just mentioned how this defensive line as a whole is thin, so it's not like we couldn't use him. If he can contribute and learn and pick,
he has the opportunities.
He has opportunity. It's just
it's not like he's blocked by anyone right now.
And let's say this too: if he doesn't contribute this year, I wouldn't hit the panic button either. We know what type of prospect he is. It's gonna take time. So even if he can't contribute this year, it doesn't mean it was a bad pick. Like
I see a lot of people talk about this. Oh, he needs to contribute immediately, or else it's a wasted pick. I'm like, you knew what he was. Like, he's a blue chip player. Like you knew how raw this kid was when you drafted him, and you probably drafted him because he's one of Fangio's favorite players in the draft. Like, he sees X factors in this kid. So, like, if he doesn't get 6 sacks his first year, just pump the brakes a little bit, and we'll head back into year 2, and then we'll see where he's at.
Yeah, we'll be okay. And Pete Evans chimes in. He is not concerned on Huff, so he agrees.
Voice of reason.
Voice of reason, Mr. Pete Evans. All right, and then we got some comments here. SGM says Jalen Hunt will have to be the New York Jets' Bryce Huff for Fangio to see consistent playing time. So, yeah, I mean, and Matthew Ross asked, what's his role in Fangio's scheme? I mean, he's going to be a stand-up edge rusher. That's what he is. He's going to be the overhang defender, stand-up edge rusher coming off and just that's what he's gonna do. I mean, he does have some coverage ability. As very like we saw very little on his college tape. I only had one game, and there wasn't too much. So again, he needs just time. He needs time. So keep the comments coming. One other thing, or two, I think two other things, depending on time. One other note, and it came from today's practice, is Will Shipley got a lot of work with the first team because Saquon was out of practice due to personal reasons.
Brinks is bricked up.
A lot of work with the ones. Gainwell still got some work with the ones, but it started with Shipley, and I know that he had two big plays, two big catches. So a lot of talk is okay. Like, are they going to use him as a receiver a lot? It's very possible. I mean, I've been saying they need to use our running backs as receivers for the past God knows how long.
Get vertical.
But I mean, hopefully with Kellen Moore now, who has had a history of using running backs as receivers, maybe they will do that more.
That's an understatement.
I like the idea of Shipley again. I said it when he was drafted, and I know Brink said it last week. And we have the reel out on ATD socials, but like I think that Will Shipley will eventually be the RB2. Yep. I think he's going to beat out Kenny Gainwell, and if it happens sooner rather than later, I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's happening. That's happening out of camp.
Yeah, I would love
to be determined.
People like, what is Kenny? Like, I know what Kenny Gainwell.
I mean, it's not even if Kenny Gainwell is better than Shipley. Is if they feel comfortable enough with Shipley to start the season with him as running back 2. If you want to say heading into next year, Shipley is running back 2, I could probably lean more in that direction. But right now, like, I just don't think he's gonna show them enough to where they're like Kenny Gainwell is RB3.
What it's gonna come down to, the one factor is gonna come down to is pass pro. That's it. If
like Saquon,
if Shipley can show enough as a pass blocker to be trusted in certain downs, where he has to pass protect, then he will beat out Kenny Gainwell sooner rather than later. But again, the pass pro thing is, I mean, when I was watching his college tape, it was horrendous. It was bad. So like he has a lot of work to do. It depends on Shipley.
I mean, we saw Kenny Gainwell because Kenny Gainwell was better at pass blocking than DeAndre Swift because DeAndre Swift was awful. That's why Kenny Gainwell got as many snaps as he did last year. So like for Will Shipley to be better in the blocking game than Kenny Gainwell, that's not the biggest stretch in the world. Like, let's calm down about Kenny Gainwell. And Saquon Barkley is one of the best blocking backs in the whole league. Yes. Yep. So Saquon Barkley is going to be in there unless he needs to get a drink of water or he has to tie his shoe or his helmet.
Need some ice cream.
Yeah, his helmet is like
general
or something like.
That's the notion in general, is that it's going to be Saquon most of the time, but like RB2 is going to be the one to spell him. It's not going to be any more of, okay, it's a passing down, like we have to get Swift out of there because he can't pass block. Like, no, it's going to be, okay, Saquon's in there until he needs a breather. That's what it is. So in those times, I'm sure there's going to be a time where it's going to be a passing down, and they're not always going to have the running back just go out on routes. The running back is going to have to pass block. So Shipley is going to have to show he can do, at least it doesn't have to be like, he doesn't have to be the world's best pass protector. He's got to just show that he can do it at a solid enough level. And then once he does, I think his physical talent is better than Kenny Gainwell at this point. So I think that's what it is. But it all depends on Shipley, how quickly he's going to pick up.
Well, like, do you guys think that Saquon Barkley is the most important skill player like on this team in terms of like season success? Not Jalen.
Yeah, skill player.
Yeah.
I would say it's still AJ.
I think it's between him and AJ. It's tough. I think it's
Saquon. I want Saquon to touch the ball 200 times this year.
He might.
He should.
He very well might. Yeah.
What's he make? $13 million a year?
Yeah, 12 roughly.
12, 13. Yeah, you're touching it 200 times, kid. Get ready.
I think it's also
All depends
not,
on how the game is going.
The game is going, like how it's. I'm not one of those people who looks at the box score and says, "Oh, they should have ran more. Oh, they didn't pass more." Like, it depends on how the game is going.
If you're airing it out for 400 yards by the third quarter, like I'm not force feeding it to
if it's like
Saquon Barkley.
If it's like 2017 where we're blowing out half of our opponents, then just run.
Just run, baby.
Yeah, don't worry about Saquon getting
if they're up by that much, then you run with Will Shipley. And then Saquon won't. If they're up by that much and that many games, then Saquon Barkley not going to touch the ball 200 times. And Will Shipley's going to touch the ball 200 times.
No, I hope so.
If you're up by that much.
I'm not anti-Shipley. I'm pro Shipley. I'm just being real. I'm like, the only thing holding him back is pass pro. That's it.
Yep.
But if he can figure that out, like I want him to be RB2. Like
if you're up by that much, Kenny Pickett might be doing some running.
Don't even start with him.
Shoe gloves, baby.
I hate that he's on our team.
The other point I wanted to get to is wide receiver 3. So far, again, this is just so far. I don't think anyone's running away with it yet, but so far it has looked like the advantage is
the Paris season.
Paris Campbell, which again, and I said this weeks ago,
it's not awful.
If I had to put my money on someone, I'd say Paris Campbell.
Or John Ross.
We'll see. He's coming away with it. I think it was a matter of it's always just going to be a matter of injuries with him, and if his physical ability has the injuries held him back to the point where now his body has deteriorated because of those injuries. We shall see. But I mean, if he comes away and wins that wide receiver 3 job and he looks good, then sure, I'm good with it.
So my underrated thing I've been listening to is when they were talking about Devontae Smith was talking about Kellen Moore, and he says that Kellen Moore is asking him to look at a lot of CeeDee Lamb tape, and I'm like, I'm excited about that because I am 100% in favor of Devontae Smith like devouring in the slot.
Yeah, absolutely. Why you have someone with that type of skill set? I don't understand why he wasn't being used like that more. Like
because X is X, Y is Y, and Z is Z. That's why. That's what they saw. That's what the previous people called the place.
Thank God
those days are done. Kellen Moore is equal opportunity for everyone, baby.
To think people wanted Cliff Kingsbury. Jesus Christ, like no.
Yeah. And
watch your mouth, young man. I expect better from you.
Cliff Kingsbury? No.
Yeah, we were like, oh, that would be a good hire. I'm like, what? In what world would you want the same old like offense to be here again? Like, why? I don't understand why people were actually thought that Cliff Kingsbury.
I mean, in true Eagles fashion, anytime they think it's going to be a good hire, it's not a good hire, and when they think it's not going to be a good hire, it's a good hire.
Well, I don't know.
And then that. SJM with 200 times a year, like that's not a crazy number like I threw out there. That's 12 touches a game.
Yeah, it's not a crazy number. Yeah, especially if you're talking about touches, which are carries
catches and runs. Yeah.
It's not a crazy number. I've just personally never liked to put a number on it and just be like, you have to meet the number. But no, I hear it. 200. It's not crazy. Like
because I think he's the focal point of our offense.
I know. I think he's going to be a major part of the offense, but I think it's still going to go through the wide receivers.
Like if you give him 12 touches, especially early, like that's enough for him to like get going and change the football game. Like
my whole thing with Barkley is simple, and it's what drove me banana sandwich last year, is that the first 4 games of last season, when you had DeAndre Swift, he would start killing it in the first half because they would give him touches. And then as the season went on, they gave him like 3 to 4 touches a half in the first half, and he would just do nothing. And then they would wait till like the fourth quarter to give him the ball, and he'd go off, and it would just be like, what are you doing? Like the numbers were there, but like the where they used him was just flabbergasting.
Here's my rebuttal to that. And I love DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is not Saquon Barkley.
I'm not saying he is.
They weren't paying they didn't invest and weren't paying Swift nearly what they invested and paid Saquon. And I think that you're talking about a different animal. Like Saquon is the type of running back where he can be the offense. We've seen that. So I think that's a difference. Like for me, I think it's just going to be a matter of who the opponent is. Like
Yep.
I think it really is a matter. Like I think there are going to be weeks where Saquon is your guy and he's going to take over, especially like I think this offense is still going to start with the running game in terms of
Yes.
Hurts and Saquon.
Yes.
It's going to start there.
That
That is
RPO is going to be sick.
you have to, and here's why. And I know we're running up against it a little bit, but you don't. If you want to really take advantage of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, you have to get those defenses to
Yep.
bring that safety down. You have to get into to single high looks to open up downfield. That's where you take your deep shots. How do you do that? By running the ball. By saying,
Yes, sir.
okay, defenses, you have to be able to guard both Hurts and the running back.
No,
Okay?
don't do that.
When last year, the reason why it started to domino is because with Hurts being hurt, defenses no longer had to fear that aspect of the run game as much. So I think that's where it starts. So it's going to start with Hurts and Saquon in the running game. And if defenses can't stop that, Saquon is just going to go off. It's going to go off. And then the games where defenses are going to key on Saquon and Hurts, that's when AJ and Devontae or Dallas Goedert even are going to go off. So I don't want to say it is definitely one or the other. I think the fact that you have two elite tier 1 skill players in Saquon and AJ Brown is such a rarity. I mean, the last time we had that combo was what? 2004 with T.O. and Westbrook. That was like the last time. So like I think that the Eagles have a good problem on our hands where they can go with either one. Both
so
of them
in summary, Chucks, you want to run to set up the throw.
The way that this roster is put together, I think that would be the best way.
That's another pet peeve of mine when I hear coaches and fans talk about throwing to set up the run. Like, no, that's backwards.
I think
what's
that
open is open.
Depends. I think it depends. Look at the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs, Andy Reid, they are a pass first team. Everything has to run through the pass game, and then Pacheco is a complement to that. So I think it depends on each team. But with this team, the way it's constructed, you run first because Hurts is a dual threat. This offensive line is still going to be a dominant run blocking offensive line. And you have Saquon Barkley. So it just makes sense to start with the run. But, it depends on the team. So this was a great show. We had good discussions today. A lot to talk about. I mean, when you have training camp start and you have some stuff to talk about, this is what happens. And we had really good input from the chat and the comments. So we greatly appreciate all you guys who tuned in. Thank you again for always coming back and listening to us. We'll be back next week again. As always, remember, we are brought to you by Baggio's Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. 10% off your order if you mention A2D Radio. So for myself, the rest of A2D Radio, for Brinks, PY, and to Tom, Big Boss, and his family, we offer up our thoughts and our best wishes. Congrats to them. And to the rest of you A2D family, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the week as Eagles training camp continues. We've got the Hall of Fame game, NFL Hall of Fame game.
Woo!
I say football is back, even if it's
back, baby.
Game, it's back. So get excited for that. And Olympics, I don't know anyone else, but I've been enjoying the Olympics, so enjoy the Olympics too.
USA.
So until next week, Chucks, Brinks, PY, we will see you. Peace.
America.